Hello everybody, I want to welcome you to my week 12 video, and today I want to talk to you about the paper 4 assignment sheet. First of all, this is our last major paper of the course, so if you have made it this far, you are almost to the finish line, my friends. It's wonderful. So if you want to follow along with me, you can do that by going to Content up at the top of our Brightspace course page, and then in the left-hand sidebar, go to Major Paper Assignments and Related Materials, and then once you're in that section, click on Paper 4. So you'll see this is a researched persuasive position essay. So to break that down and understand what that means, you're going to be doing research for this paper that you'll include in the paper, researched. It's persuasive, just like paper 3 was persuasive. So your job is to persuade your reader that your ideas are logical, that they make sense. And it's a position essay, so you're taking a position on a topic or an issue, right? So that's sort of how you would break that down. You'll be asked to write this persuasive position essay on the topic of immigration and or the refugee crisis and argue your ideas effectively and fairly. So the overarching question that you're answering in this paper will be whether refugees and or immigrants should be welcomed into the United States. Where are the boundary lines there? Where are the parameters? So is there a higher law, quote unquote, that should supersede man-made laws? Can the United States be a nation if it does not have borders and laws that determine the process of legal immigration? So there are lots of sides to this issue, and it's a very relevant, controversial issue right now, which means we have to be careful as we're writing not to become too overly emotional about it. We want to maintain that academic sense of logos, logic, right? A list of possible topics and text choices is provided to you on this document. You might want to take one of those and tweak it a little bit or narrow it a little bit. And most of the time when students ask me if they can do that, I tell them sure. So you can run that past me if you are so inclined. Here are the important dates. On Monday, the 16th of November, that's when your revision for either paper 1 or 2 comes due, should you choose to submit one for a higher grade, and should you choose to be eligible to submit, or should you be eligible to submit one. And there's a section in your syllabus that talks about the revision, but essentially you would choose between papers 1 and 2 and revise that paper in order to hopefully earn a higher grade on it. And that's an opportunity that I offer to you to help you. And so you have to submit that revision though before 11:59 p.m. on Monday the 16th, or I cannot accept it. And the reason is because now we're coming on into the end of the semester, and that's a time when we as instructors have a lot of grading on our plates. And this is something I'm doing for you to help you with your grade. So I cannot extend that time. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to choose between papers 1 and 2. You want to look at them, look back at them. And I'm going to open up those places on Brightspace where you submitted so that you can go back and look and make a decision there. You want to think about which of those papers you made the lower grade on. You want to look in the syllabus to see what percentage point they're each worth, and take the math into consideration when you're making your decision. You're eligible to submit a revision if you have turned in all of the major papers on time up to this moment, right? So if you've done that, you're good. Or if you had an official extension from me and you turned in the paper within that time of the official extension, you're eligible. To turn in that revision, you're going to make all the corrections that I noted in my comments on your graded paper. So let's say you decide to revise paper 2. You're going to go in and look back at the comments that I made And every single suggestion that I made, you're going to fix that in a new revised copy of that paper. So the little things, maybe it's a comma error, to the big things. Maybe you forgot to include a thesis statement. Maybe your thesis wasn't clear. Maybe your organization was off. Maybe your formatting was off. Whatever it might be, you're going to revise every single thing that I've asked you to revise. And you're going to upload that revised paper, that brand new draft, along with a brief 1/2 page document outlining briefly to me the changes that you've made. So, dear Professor Ireland, I chose to revise paper 2. I corrected the comma and semicolon errors that I made as per your suggestion. I revised my thesis statement. I made my conclusion stronger, whatever it is. Thank you for this opportunity. Sincerely yours, your name, right? So that brief little 1/2 page document that you'll put in there, you could put it after your paper, or you could upload it separately from your paper, but you would upload it in the same place. And to upload, you would go to the Assignments tab and look for Paper Revisions. And then your new grade is the average of your original paper grade and your revised paper grade. So if you correct all of the errors and you do your job there, it's possible that your grade can be raised an entire letter, which really helps you. Do not submit the very same paper that you submitted the first time. Don't do that. I've actually had students who just submit the very same paper that they originally submitted for paper 1 or paper 2, and they actually don't make any changes. If you do that, you have really wasted my time and made me read a paper that is exactly the same, and I will catch it. And not only will I not raise your grade, I might even deduct some points from it for the trouble that you caused and the dishonesty that is clear there. So don't do that. So that's just something coming up on Monday the 16th. On Monday the 23rd of November, it's our idea workshop for paper 4. And as always, I'll give you those idea worksheet questions to sort of get you thinking. You'll upload your worksheet. You'll click on the Assignments tab, look for that idea worksheet for paper 4, and follow the instructions there. You'll submit before 11:59 p.m. Then Wednesday the 25th of November, is a self-review day. So this takes the place of peer review or pre-writing day. So you go to the Assignments tab, you look for self-review for paper 4, and you'll follow the instructions there. And there will be questions that you will need to answer. You're going to be thinking about your new paper that you're writing for paper 4, and you're going to go back and look at a previously graded paper to make sure that you're not making the same kinds of errors in paper 4 that you might have made in that previous paper. So it is a self-review, and the purpose is to help you learn to critique your own writing, to recognize errors in your own writing. And just like with the peer review day and the pre-writing day, 10 points can be deducted from your paper 4 grade if you don't submit that self-review on time. Then on Monday, the 30th of November, that's the day that the final draft of paper 4 is due, before 11:59 p.m. And again, as always, 10 points are docked from that paper grade for every calendar day it's late, including the day that it's due and weekends, and they're not accepted after 5 days. So specifics, 2.5 pages long, so not a very long paper again. If you go over that, that's great, but if you don't make the 2.5 pages, you get points deducted. As always, you're typing the paper and uploading it, you're spacing it, double spaced, in Times New Roman 12-point font, standard margins. So for this assignment, you need at least 3 sources. So the first one will be a text that we're studying together in this last unit that you choose to write about. And this unit begins on the day that paper 4 is introduced, and that's today. And it ends on the day that paper 4 is due. So anything that we're reading together and looking at together, you can write about it. And then you need 2 secondary sources on the topic of immigrants or refugees that you locate on your own from credible places such as the Pellissippi Library databases. And by the way, on our Brightspace course page on the main announcements section, the first thing that comes up when you go onto our course page, if you scroll down in the lower right hand corner, there's a little tab that says Ask a Librarian. And if you click on that during normal business hours, you can chat live with a librarian who could help you with your search for some good sources there. You can also do a one search in the Pellissippi Library databases section where you can type in immigration, or you can type in refugees, refugee crisis, or whatnot, and sources will come up there as well that are very credible. So you want to quote from and or paraphrase from those sources in the body of your paper, citing them at the end, an MLA citation in parentheses. You want to also cite all the sources that you're using fully on that separate works cited page that comes at the very end and is on its own page. And your essay needs to conform to a formal academic structure. So the intro, the thesis, as the very last sentence of that intro, supporting paragraphs, formal conclusion. The objective of this paper is to write persuasively, fairly, and effectively as you consider the main overarching question: should the United States be welcoming of immigrants and or refugees? If so, are there certain conditions there that you feel should be enacted? If not, why not? What's your reasoning? And if so, what's your reasoning? And in addition, at some point in your paper, address the following 4 questions. Who is the other in the text that you've chosen from the text that we're looking at together in this story? Who, in your view, is the other in that story? How is the other perceived and presented in that story or article? Does the other change in the course of that text or article? How and why? And then how and why might the reader's view of the other change due to that text? So the following is a list of articles and essays from our unit here, which you can choose. And the reading that you choose will serve as one of the required sources for this paper. So the first one is Waiting by Thun Hai Lei. And that reading, of course, is up on D2L Brightspace. So your objective, you're going to use this text in some way to argue whether or not immigrants, refugees should be welcomed into the U.S. And in addition, you're going to describe the other. Who is she? Well, she's the narrator. She's Lei. What are her circumstances? How is she perceived and presented? How and why might she have changed over the course of time in the story? And then how and why might our views of her and other people like her change due to having read her story and developed a better understanding? And then you want to locate 2 other sources on the topic of immigrants or refugees in the U.S. that help to support your ideas. So let me be clear on this. Waiting might serve as your main source, and then the other 2 sources support it. Or one of the other 2 sources on immigration or refugees might serve as your main source, and Waiting could act as a supportive source of that. So you could do that, in either of those ways. The other choice is My Life as an Undocumented Immigrant by Jose Antonio Vargas, and that reading also is up on Brightspace. So your objective is to use that article by Vargas to argue whether, again, immigrants and or refugees should be welcomed into the U.S. And that's your main question that you're answering. And then at some point in the essay, you should also describe the other in this text. So who is Vargas, right? What kind of person is he? What's his story? What are his circumstances? How is he perceived and presented in this text? And obviously, he's the narrator. He's the speaker, just like Lei is in Waiting. So he's telling his own story. Um, and then explain how and why he changes over the course of time, and we see those changes, right? At first, he's just a young kid when he's sent to the United States. He thinks that he's coming here legally. He doesn't know that his documents are fake until later on. And then you can explain sort of how that makes him feel and what that does to his life and how that changes him. And then explain how and why our views of him and others like him might change due to having read his story. And then again, you're going to find 2 other sources that connect. And then the third option is Square Unveils film about Falafel Man by Rachel Totten, that article about Yassine Toureau, and the short film on that same topic, Yassine Falafel, that we're watching. And as you may know, Yassine Toureau owns the Falafel House restaurants here in Knoxville. He's become something of a local celebrity, and he's actually even become known all over the country for his amazing story. He came here as a refugee, very challenging circumstances, and just created this incredible life, and he is so inspiring. I have to tell you, the first time that I taught this globalized section of 1010, I had students who were so moved after we watched the Yassine Falafel little short movie in class. They actually, after class, all got together and went to the Falafel House because they were so moved and they wanted to meet Yassine Toureau. And they met him and they ate falafels. And he was so gracious and so wonderful. And they said, "Did you know that we are studying about you in our college class?" He was like, "What?" He was really excited to know that we were learning about his story. And so it's just a very, very wonderful, inspirational story. So those are the options. To do well on this paper, you want to make sure you've chosen a title that reflects your topic in an informative and a creative way. Do you have that hook in place as your opening sentence that sort of makes your reader want to keep reading? Have you clearly explained the subject matter of your paper in that introductory paragraph? Again, if we get to the end of paragraph 1 and we do not know what this paper is about, we are in trouble, right? Do you have a thesis that states your main idea clearly? Is it located at the end of paragraph 1? Have I answered the questions asked of me? So, have you answered the question, should refugees and immigrants be welcomed into the U.S.? That's the main question that this paper should be focused upon. Take a side on that issue. Now, you may feel that they should be based on certain criteria. You may feel that they should not be based on certain criteria. But you've got to take a position. That's why it's a researched, persuasive position essay. And then at some point in your paper, you want to explain who the other is in the text that we've chosen, that person that is often viewed by other people as being different, right? So it may be Vargas, it may be Yassine, it may be Thanhaile, depending on what you're writing about. How is the other perceived and presented in that text? Does the other change in the story? How and why? And how and why might our views as readers of the other change due to that story? Does each paragraph in your essay begin with a clear topic sentence? Have you chosen one of the article's essays listed here to write about? Have you found 2 other sources to use that comment on the subject matter and support your ideas? Have you quoted from all of your sources and or correctly paraphrased them within the body of your paper, citing them correctly in MLA? Have you written a concluding paragraph that sums up your ideas without repeating your thesis, word for word? Have you saved some insight maybe for that concluding paragraph? Do you have a separate works cited page at the end of your paper? Are all 3 of the sources you've used cited there fully, correctly, according to MLA? And then have you proofread, spell checked, and grammar checked your paper? Very important. You do not want to turn, especially the last paper of the semester, in full of errors. Not good. So here are some examples of introductions and thesis statements for the above mentioned text. And the first one is for Waiting. Fan Hale's compelling short story Waiting is a moving text based on her own history as an immigrant fleeing persecution. As the narrator desperately tries to keep in touch with family members who did not escape, one may see the ways in which the protagonist, that's a word we use to refer to the main character, Lei, has grown and changed, in turn changing the hearts and minds of readers as they walk in her shoe. Lei's story, along with other compelling research, demonstrates that our nation is stronger because of the many immigrants who bravely seek asylum on our shores. Therefore, one may argue that refugees should be welcomed into our country. So you see, in that introduction and thesis, we know, first of all, who the writer is, what the title of her text is that we're focusing on. We know a bit about her story. We've got something that hooks us in, that makes us wonder, wow, so this is a story about someone fleeing persecution in another country to come to the U.S., and she's desperately, after she's here, trying to keep in touch and find out what's going on with her family members who didn't make it out, right? So that really kind of makes you want to keep reading. And the questions that need to be addressed are all sort of being addressed right off the bat, so the reader knows where you're headed with this paper. And then you've got the thesis. So to create a successful essay, and remember, your thesis and the body of your paper must agree with each other, right? Otherwise, one of them must change. So you've got to fulfill the promises that you're making in your thesis statement to your reader. It's like a promise that you're making. Show your reader that Lei's story is in fact compelling and moving through quotes that you use from that text. Show us how she tries to remain in touch with her brother, how she thinks back to those sweet memories that she's cherishing of him and of the other family members she had to leave behind. Explain how she grows and changes over the course of her life, and why we as readers might change our views after we've seen her as a real person with a name, with a story, not just a refugee or an immigrant. She becomes real to us. So your sources may relate directly to her and her life. They may be biographical sources that you find about her. Or they may comment on the plight of immigrants in general from her region, or just in general from anywhere. If your stance is in support of the idea of welcoming refugees and immigrants, then you would argue that, throughout the essay, that they actually make our nation stronger. The second choice, the piece by Vargas, I'll allow you to read through it. I won't bore you by reading through the entire thing word for word, but notice that his story is that of the story of people who are called dreamers. So you might want to do some research there on DACA, right? These people who are brought here to our country as children, they are underage, and so therefore they did not come knowingly as illegal immigrants. They really didn't have a choice in the matter. They either came with other relatives who were of age, or they were sent here the way Vargas was, not really understanding what's going on. And so the big question there is, should they be treated differently because of that? Should they be sent back when in essence this isn't really their choice? So notice that this student's intro and thesis that I give you is taking the view that while the story of Vargas, as of many of the dreamers, touches readers and can cause us to rethink our views on immigration, despite that emotion, this writer says one may still argue that our nation must have immigration laws that protect its citizens. Without such laws, our country will not endure into the future. So that's a different view than the first view. And so if you're arguing that despite Vargas's courage and the deep emotion we might feel for him, laws against illegal immigration should still be enforced, then you want to obviously locate data sources that validate those ideas. And then the third one is an example of using the piece about Yassine Toureau, both the film and the short article there. And here's one final note that's very important. You'll find some excellent sources, both pro and con immigration refugees, on, again, the Pellissippi Library website. If you go to the Opposing Viewpoints in Context database, and if you just type in immigration or illegal immigration or refugee crisis into the search box, so you'll find sources that are for the idea of immigrants being welcomed, sources that are against, and there's some good ones. You can also go to a site called procon.org, I believe it is, and you might procon.org, and type into the search box those same terms, and you'll find some interesting sources that you can use there. So this week we're also reading Waiting by Thanhale and Immigrants by Pat Mora, which is a poem. And there are some short films that I'm asking you to watch. None of them is very long. They are disturbing, some of them. I should warn you, they have disturbing images in them. What does it mean to be a refugee? The Syrian refugee crisis, real footage from Syria, so this is actual footage. What life is like in war-torn Syria, that's from NBC News. And then Hell on Earth, horrific aftermath of an alleged Syria chemical attack from ABC News. So you're going to see some difficult to watch footage of what some of these people have gone through. And then this week's discussion board, we're considering immigrants and waiting. And then next week, looking ahead, again, you want to turn in that revision if you're eligible and if you're so inclined. Read this section from your little seagull on arguments, because it will help you write a better argumentative paper. And then we're looking at Vargas and at the pieces on Yassine Falafel, including that wonderful film. And we're going to look at a sample paper 4, which will be helpful to you. We're going to also revisit that what makes you you and who is the other. So we're going to look back at what you originally wrote way back at the beginning of the semester, and then revisit those ideas to see if your ideas might have changed along the way through the course of our class. And we're going to consider Vargas and Yassine in the Week 13 discussion board. So thanks for your patience. Good luck with paper 4. Let me know if you have questions, and I'll see you in the next video.